Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back once again to Red Hot Talk. As you can see, I'm by myself today because Rod is not available, so I'll be going solo. But because I'm go solo, I would like to talk about something I'm passionate about, which is Michael Four Third, as you can see from the title. So I'm very excited to talk about this subject once again, and obviously a lot of you who've been following me for quite a while knows that this channel is very heavily Michael Four Third based, and so it is a good time maybe to have a little bit of a reflection, talking about Michael Four Third developments over the past few years, what we currently have, and what could be done more to make this platform better for everybody. Of course, I'm going to break it down into little pieces. First of all, probably we're going to focus on the technological side of it. Then we'll talk about both photography and on the video side as well. I know many of you may not be video based or video oriented, or maybe even interested in any sort of video making, but Michael Four Third is actually a very, very good platform for video. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well towards the end. So it is interesting, and so let's have a nice conversation and be gentle, everybody. And I just don't want to see any hostile comments and things like that about Michael Four Third. As you know, we are all photographers there, and I personally use all kinds of formats, whether it's going to be Michael Four Third, APS-C medium format, and full frame. I have all the cameras with me, to be quite honest, and I do use them interchangeably. Most of my shoots are conducted through Michael Four Third and full frame these days. Occasionally I'll use APS-C, but not very often. APS-C is kind of like an oddball for me for the time being. It's kind of not quite the Michael Four Third, but not quite full frame either. So I'm just trying to figure out what to do with my APS-C cameras, such as the ZFC. Okay, so let's have a look at Andrew saying that is he stuck in a Santa costume? Perhaps, yeah. You're gonna have to ask Rod about my Santa grotto experience. He might be dressing up as Santa as we speak at the moment. Okay. First of all, I would like to hear from all of you to see how many of you are using Michael Four Third or still using Michael Four Third or have any experience using Michael Four Third cameras, and what's your current camera, what sort of current setup you have, and we're gonna go from there, because it is important to kind of understand what you have, and whether you are still using some perhaps slightly older gear, or someone who may be using the latest and the greatest, such as the OM1 Mark II, the GX7, or the G9 Mark II, because we're going to talk a little bit about the overall Michael Four Third developments for the last 10 or so years. As you're probably aware, I recently published a video talking about the camera industry in general, how frustrated I am for a lot of the camera makers are not focusing on making great cameras for photographers. They are now really gunning for the hybrid markets, the newer generations of creators, more than the pure breed, the pure photographer who really just enjoying photography, for instance. Despite what OM or Panasonic or even everybody in the industry saying that this is a great still photographer cameras and this and that, but they all have video features. So my first question is video feature relevant in any cameras? Even though that you may be a photographer, would you use any of the video features in your camera at the moment? Do you use them? Do you use it to capture maybe a clips here and there for the family running around or something like that? Or do you just simply use your smartphone for video and use your camera just to take photos? Because this is really a kind of like a debatable subject, whether hybrid market exists or not. In my book, is that hybrid market doesn't quite make sense to me, simply because if I want to take photos, I would rather have a photography cameras that just does really well for photos. And then I'm going to use, whether it's going to be Pocket 3, whether it's going to be my iPhone, or I'm just going to bring up my GX7 just to shoot full-on videos, for all my commercial stuff. So hybrid is kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to express myself, but it's just not something that I personally think that it makes sense. Because if you ask me as a professional, if a client approach me, ask me whether I want to, can I take photos and video at the same time? I would say I can do both, but I would not recommend to do both because I would either concentrate on photos only or videos only. I cannot split my mind into do two things at the same time because photos makings and video makings are very different breed. Despite the similarities in the technical side of it or the skill set, the overall approach is very different. Filmmaking is about storytelling from the motion pictures point of view. You have to consider the flow, the cinematics, the cinematography of it. While stills, yeah, you may be also saying it's storytelling, but the documentation side of it is very, very, very different. So when a client approached me asking about video and photo, I will say that if you want me to be a photographer, I will be the photographer. If you want me to be the videographer, I'll be the videographer. I will not be a hybrid. I will not do both because I simply cannot do a great job if I do both at the same time. So this is why I personally think that hybrid cameras do not make sense. And hence, that I use OM1 Mark II. I have my GX7 and the GX6, and I also have this. I have the G9 Mark II, which I haven't used or touched for about 4 months now, maybe even 5 months. If anyone wants to buy the G9 Mark II from me, let me know. PM me because I am selling the G9 Mark II. To be honest, it hasn't really been used that much. I probably shot about, I don't know, 2,000 shots, and that's about it. I haven't really touched it. It's gathering dust at the moment, so I'm definitely going to have to sell it. Okay. Oh, Robin's in the house. Hello there. Robin's in the house. You know, he's another great Michael 4/3 creator, photographer, and a dear friend of mine. And yeah, we share a lot in common, talking about any sort of topics regarding small format cameras. Oh, you know what? Yeah, you know why I'm stuttering today is because it's super hot. Not super hot. The other way around. Super cold in London. Yeah, today we're heading -1, and this morning my car was frozen. Everything was frozen. I was out to the door to do my first morning shoot in the morning. When I was heading out, the temperature was -1 and 0, so it was really, really cold. By the time I reached my destination, my family was really waiting for me, and it was only 1 degree, so like everybody was freezing. It's actually very, very difficult. But anyway, we did the shoot, and it was okay. The photo turned out great, and yeah, so I'm going to starting read a little bit of a comment now, and after my question earlier to see how many of you are using what sort of camera gear you have, or whether you think hybrid cameras make sense or not, because I think that it will be interesting to hear from you. Okay, first of all, say hello to everybody. Once again, I already said hi to Red35. Sorry, I'm reading my own comments. Robin and Philip, David, LeBron photo. Ooh, LeBron. I hope you're not LeBron James, eh? Andrew Banner, of course, and Vic, and Morris, Bruce, Bryce. Fantastic. We've got quite a few people tuning in already. Okay, so let's see some of your comments and what sort of camera you guys are using at the moment. OM1 Mark II, OM5, right? And okay, and EM5, right? That's great. And anything else? GX5S. Oh, wow. Okay, GX5S. You know what? GX5S is a fantastic camera for video. Lower megapixel count, but great for low light. And this is it, right? Okay, let's go to a little bit of the video side of it. This is the point what I was making about the hybrid market. GX5 is a very much video camera, even though you can take stills. But 12 megapixel Michael 4/3 sensor doesn't seem a lot, but it's enough for 4K, right? There's more than enough for 4K, and because of the small, the lower resolution count in the sensor, that means the photo size and each of the pixels are much larger than normal. So in terms of pixel level noise performance, is much better even than some of the newer models, and hence I think the GX5S is still a great camera. And for those who are into Michael 4/3 platform and into video making, the GX5S is still one of the beasts I would recommend people to get. The photo, that's debatable because 12 megapixel may be just a little bit low for modern standard, and people may not want to use that sort of low megapixel counts to print brick, for instance. But then again, 12 megapixel is actually okay. I don't think that is resolution wise that low. When you say low, I recently went to Spain, took my 6 megapixel Epson camera to document the entire family holiday with that 6 megapixel camera. So is it good enough? Well, a certain thing is still good enough, 6 megapixel, depending on what sort of images you are going to use it for, whether it's for printing or for displaying or just simply just put it on the screen. For screen usage, 6 megapixel is still good. May not be 4K level because 4K you need 8 megapixel minimum, but 6 megapixel is kind of more or less there, about 3.5K. So more than enough for general use. For 6x5, 6x4 photos, 7x5 is still okay to print. So I don't see any deficiency when it comes to megapixel. And that's another thing that we're going to talk about in the future, because megapixel doesn't really come into account. And people are just playing mind games at the moment. I definitely need the 40 megapixel. I definitely need 50 megapixels. But in reality, do you really need that many megapixels? Yes, you can do pixel peep. You can blow it up 200% to satisfy your curiosity in the pixel sharpness. But for me, as a photographer, I look at the overall aesthetic. If I got a good image, it's a great image, right? I don't need to pixel peep the image, and that's probably what I was trying to say. Okay, so. Just go back to the development side of it. Oh, PenF. Okay, I'm just continue reading it. EM1X, OM1, many more cameras. EM52, TL is saying GX80, EPL7. Who's Seraphines? Never do video. Okay, OM5, EM53, and TG6. Right. Okay, many cameras. EM1X, EM5, APL6. How many of you love the EPL series? I personally love the EPL series. I think the EPL 6, 7, and 9 are very, very good cameras. Not so sure about the 10. The 10 is literally the EPL 9, to be quite honest. And I think actually EPL 7 and 8, both of them are really great cameras. They still have the accessory port at the top. It's still metal built. It still had that great, gorgeous pen look. So because of the accessory port, you can adapt or add an additional EVF on top. So I think at that time, Olympus really played it well with the EPL series. They give you the option to not have the EVF or to add the EVF. You want to do something slightly more eye level, and also utilizing the flip up feature of the external EVF. I love those external EVF. I think it's a great option for photographer, and I don't know why nowadays camera makers don't offer the options anymore, because I think it's a genius idea, right? If you have something like the EPL camera, it's very small form factor, flat body, and everything just looking really good. And if you want to have a viewfinder, you have that option to add to it if you really want to. If you just really wanted the most compact size and slip into the pocket without having that lump on top, you can take off the EVF. So I think it's really, really good idea. I would still like to see a camera maker make something like that to give us the option to use external EVF. Better still, if the external EVF is upgradable, if it's detachable, pretty sure that that can be made, that can happen, right? You can have high resolution EVF. When the new model comes along, you can just basically swap it and plug in a newer EVF to give you better resolution. That's future proofing, right? But I know for many reasons, it's probably cost reasons. For instance, it's not feasible for manufacturers to do that. For instance, high resolution EVF will require larger bandwidth, so the existing chipset may not be able to support that. But this is the thing about camera market in general, the developments, not just about Micro Four Third. I know we talk about Micro Four Third, but I think the overall developments of the cameras are very restrictive, so restrictive to the point that because they are technology, they're computers these days, they feel outdated. Not so much of image making side of it, but in terms of technology, superficially on paper at least, it feels outdated after 2 years. and you can't really upgrade them. Not really. You mean apart from firmware update, which usually about bug fixings, about not so much about feature enhancement. Every now and then you may get feature enhancement, but when was the last time you see a great feature enhancement firmware came out from any camera makers? Fujifilm tends to do a lot. The OM or Olympus before that, the last really big gigantic firmware update that I saw was the EM1 Mark II. Remember the firmware 2.0 or 3.0. That was fantastic. That was probably the best firmware I've ever seen from any manufacturers. They give you much better CAF performance in video. It bumped up a lot of the performances from an old body. The EM1 Mark II is instantly transformed the EM1 Mark II into almost EM1 Mark III categories. So that is something that I would like to see manufacturers do more. Because imagine, all of us, investing in a camera body that costs almost $2,000, right? And you want your money to be well spent and last a few more years, not just a couple of years. And that's happening across the entire photographic space, not just about camera makers. Software is the same thing, right? We see DxO, Pure Raw. Every version, they charge you more money to support newer cameras. So if you so happen upgrade your cameras and you're a long-term Pure Raw user and your model is not supported by the older version, you have to get the new version to get supported. I think that's not right. To add support, is not something that I think is it will cost you that much. I mean, new feature, sure, but support for older cameras or newer cameras, it should be included in some of the older software. I just believe the software makers also going into that category, trying to squeeze as much money from us as possible. As living costs rising, inflation is going up. Cameras are getting more and more expensive, and a lot of us are simply, even we have the money, we would rather have to spend the money somewhere else, going to better places to photograph better things, than just to upgrade certain things, this and that, to get compatible with my current cameras and setup. And I think that's a scam, right? It's not something that I appreciate, but it's happening across the entire photographic space now. Unfortunately, there aren't many people that will charge you a one-off fee while still giving you updates every so often. One of the reasons why I still use Final Cut Pro, for instance, for video and Apple is that because I only paid the license once, and that was about 6-7 years ago now. I pay £199, and now I think they charge you £250 or something like that. But that's all I pay. That's 6 years ago, and every year I still get a big update and free of charge. I would like to see something like that still, but I can understand the cost of development, the R&D and so forth. It may not be feasible, but like I said, for camera compatibilities and support, these should have been supported even with older software. A new feature, like I said, is totally justified, for more money, and that's for sure. But compatibility, come on, you just give us that compatibility that would be fantastic, right? I have Pure Raw 2 and 3. I haven't got the latest one. And not that it's bad, it's great. But the thing is, I already pay for Adobe Lightroom, the Adobe Photography Suite. I'm paying for it already, and now they have AI noise reduction. It may not be as good as Pure Raw, but because of my EM1 Mark II is not supported in Pure Raw 3. It has to be Pure Raw 4. And I just hate that, and why do I have to pay the £75 upgrade fee for Pure Raw 4 just to get support for my EM1 Mark II file and a GX7, right? And it's not right. And Adobe, on the other hand, is supported, and so I don't need to worry about whichever model I use is already supported in the base kind of calculations there. As much as you may hate Adobe, but I think that for what I pay for is totally justifiable. And I don't know where you are at the moment. In the UK, we pay £9.99 for the photography suite, which including Photoshop and Lightroom, which is fantastic value for money if you think about it. So the whole year would cost me probably 3/4 of the cost of a Pure Raw update. And if you buy pure raw right now, it costs you 150, 180 quid. I'm not entirely sure how much it is now. So the overall cost just to get that compatibility is significant. And if you upgrade your camera 2 years later, then you have to get another pure raw. Yeah, and so that doesn't really quite make sense to me. So just go back to the sorry, my headphone cable. I need to change the cable. The cable is crackling at the moment. I can't quite hear sometimes. Let's see what else you guys have now. Clin have the G9 and GX8. Yeah, great stuff. And a few other Sony APS-C camera. We'll be soon at auction blocks. Okay. What about Lumina Neo? Maurice has said Lumina Neo is good. I have one as well. I have a license for that because I was reviewing it at the time, so I still have the license, which is okay. But then again, I think some of the new features need to be paid for. Compatibilities, I believe they still support newer cameras. I'm not entirely sure because I haven't really been touching Neo for quite a while. I did actually get the latest APSC, which is the AI portrait skin enhancement software. I was one of the early birds, so I actually got the live license, which is good. Because now if you get the APSC, you need to pay yearly and a subscription fee to access the AI feature. The APSC that I got now is for life. So no matter how many updates, how many iterations they have in the future, I'm going to get it totally free. So lucky that I got into that early enough to do that. So I think they closed that offer now. So everything you want to get now is it has to be subscription. So they may at some point offer that once again. But if you see that, if you're a portrait photographer, commercially, professional, I think it's worthwhile getting it. And I'm really started using it. It's fantastic software, much better than some of the other AI skin software that I've seen in the past. And this is definitely quite natural and for commercial use, of course, and it's definitely worthwhile investment. Okay, TL, going to Marrakesh tomorrow for 7 days with the EPL 7 and a 14mm panel. Nice setup there. That's really good. And DxO8 AI is freakingly good, Owen said. Like I said, don't get me wrong, DxO is great. I just don't like the fact that, especially from the pure raw point of view, that I have to upgrade every time to get support for newer cameras. I always vouch for DxO because the pure raw is really a great companion, I would say, for any Micro Four Thirds user. It really cleans up the noise so well that it revives a lot of the not only older camera models but also enhances the newer models when it comes to high ISO capabilities. Suddenly you got a comparable system to larger format, for instance. It may not be to the same level as a full frame, but definitely matching APS-C if you use the pure raw. So for that, I think it's definitely essential for any Micro Four Thirds users. Bruce, okay, let's just see other comments right here. Okay. Chuck, it's a shame that there isn't a standard so you can move your edit photos from one product to another. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? I actually think you nailed it there. It's almost like raw images, right? You would think that DNG should be a standard. DNG should be a standard for all raw formats. So there's no more, ORF files, and no more RWL files. There's no more different kind of raw files, right? Just simple standard form, open source format DNG. And that's basically compatible across the entire scope of space, and that would be fantastic. You can move around different raw software. You have the metadata there, and you can just swap around things like that. It'll be great. You don't have to worry about supports anymore. And but no, they decided not to. Obviously, for good reasons, from a camera maker's point of view, they want to protect their rights and things. They don't want they want to make more money. Let's put it that way. Anyway, let's continue our discussions today. So let me ask you guys a few more questions now, and since you're already tuning in, so I can see a lot of Micro Four Third cameras that you're still using, and how many of you think that the developments of Micro Four Third cameras haven't moved for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years? I don't know, and how many think that we haven't actually seen any major advancement for the last few years, in short? Let me know in the comments, and we're going to have a little discussions about that. Personally, let me talk a little bit, reflect my personal aspects of it, is that I think we are entering the age when we're seeing camera makers not making leaps forward, leaps advancements compared to, let's say, 15, 20 years ago now. We don't see that major bump in resolution. We don't see that major bump in dynamic range. We don't see major bump in many, many things now, because we're reaching to the point, and how many of us can actually utilize those newer developments? You know, that half a stop dynamic range, do you really notice it? You know, only the trained eye, when you really push your image to that limit, then you will be able to see that or notice that. You know, when it comes to how fast you can shoot your cameras, is, you know, is 15 frames too slow for you? Is 20 frames too slow for you? You know, 50, 60 frames, is that really that fast? Do you use that? I know they're great numbers to hear. You know, you just think, wow, you know, a camera can shoot 40, 50 frames per second raw continuously for 10 seconds. That sounds like amazing, right? It's just freakingly good. But then again, when you think about your photography, I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying boldly speaking, many of us probably won't. And even the features is in the camera, you wouldn't use it because it's a chaos, right? Imagine you have that high speed shooting mode on, and you go on holiday. Within a day, you probably end up with 3,000 photos just because, you know, the your trigger happy fingers keep pressing it, and every time you press it, there's about 6-7 frames in your cameras already, and that is something to think about when you have the continuous mode on, and which quite often these days you will have it on. The faster the cameras, the more frame you're going to capture. Yes, potentially, statistically, you're going to get the chances of getting that shot or that moment is much higher. That's for sure. It's statistics, right? But then again, you have to go through that thousands and thousands of photos to find that frame that you thought you got. That's a chore. That is something that I personally think is not good. You know, I think photography needs discipline. Photography needs educations. Photography needs a certain amount of considerations and care, instead of, you know, basically having the high-speed continuous mode on and hope for the best. You're facing a scene. You just press the button. Hopefully that 5,000 frames, one of them would work. That's not my photography, and I'm not sure about you, but then I personally would not want to go through that many thousands of photos just to pick a frame that I like. And I would like to study an environment. I like to study the surrounding, and to make sure that the light is what I like. And then I want to observe to see, you know, when is the right moment to do it. Then I press the shutter button. You know, I may have continuous mode on, but I will probably put on low rather than high. Even in my commercial shoot, I don't use high frame rate. I use low frame rate. The only time I use a high frame rate is whether I'm going to be capturing, you know, kids running, whether I'm going to be capturing younger toddlers and families, simply because they move randomly, and it's very hard to nail that expressions or the eye contact with me. So only in those moments I'll use high speed shooting, but overall I don't tend to use it because I'll end up too many frames to look at the end of the day. And as a commercial photographer, time is money, time is essence, and I really cannot afford to look at thousands and thousands and thousands of images just to think that, you know, oh, I'm gonna pick some really good ones from those many images. I just think that that's waste of time. And for me, whatever I capture, I already know that I got the shot or not, more or less. So I like to be disciplined. Definitely something that I price myself for. Otherwise, you'll be spending days and days and days in front of the screen trying to edit the photos or trying to look for the photos before you even edit them. So that's me. So let's see what you think about development side of it, because the last time I see something really great for Michael Four Third is probably have to trace it all the way back to when they first introduced the IBIS in the camera, and also having the live composite and live bulb features. And those to me were game-changing technologies that basically we still pride ourselves to having, especially from the Olympus camera, Olympus or OM system cam, because so far I haven't seen anybody else does or have these sort of features. IBIS, of course, but OM is still probably leading the way in terms of stabilization. They are probably still on top when it comes to the overall stabilities of the cameras and the lens. The dual IS is probably still the best. When it comes to computational features, OM system definitely / Olympus still leads the way, because the live bulb and live composite are still unmatched by any camera makers out there at the moment. No one else does that sort of thing. So that's me. But I know that in terms of photography wise, your needs may be different, because I know some of you think that pro capture is a game changer. And sure, I love pro capture, but I don't use it because I don't need to do birdings and birds in flights or anything kind of like really sudden, unexpected. So I don't do that sort of thing. But I know for some photographer, pro capture is really a game changer for them. Equally, Starry Sky AF is really fantastic for astrophotographers. Also, the live ND and the live grad ND. I love grad ND more than live ND. But there are many computational things that OM system has done really well. But for me, if I have to prioritize everything, and I think the IBIS and also the live com and live bulb are the features I think is game changing in the photography market. And that was the last time I feel that really makes something happen, and something that really excites me. For the last 10 years or so now, you're just seeing refining the technologies with each generations, more than changing or upgrading or giving us new features that you would say wow me. I haven't been wowed as yet for the last few years, not just OM but across the board. I haven't really seen anything. Maybe to a certain extent Canon's IAF is something that I think is quite cool, because it will be quite an interesting thing for a camera to do. IAF, you just simply roll your eyeball, look at as the subject in the EVF, the focusing point will move with that and to focus whatever your eyes looking at. That will be quite intuitive and probably potentially great for any photographer, really, for those who use AF, for instance. Even better than joystick. Having talked about joystick, I think joystick is probably quite good as well in terms of invention, and although it's now becoming more standard practice now. Having said that, OM still reserving the joystick for their top-end cameras, and I would like to see joystick maybe on the OM5, the next OM5, or maybe even other cameras they eventually release. The same thing can be said for Lumix cameras, so they only have the joystick and the G9 Mark II and the GX7. They don't have anything else on lower marking, I don't think, which is something that I have to bring on board. Recently, I reviewed the XM5 from Fujifilm. They have the joystick even in the low-end camera, so I don't know why they just can't do the joystick thing across the entire lineup, and would it cost that much more than a standard D-pad? I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure it probably cost about the same. And so why can't we all have joysticks? Why the joystick, a simple little joystick, can be so difficult to implement to even the cheaper cameras? I mean, they should be across the board, and I think so anyway. But okay, let's have a look at your comments to see is there anyone thinking about what I was saying. So I love to have one of the Micro Four Third comes to make a tiny twin reflex style camera with basic operation. Oh, wouldn't that be great, right? I think Rod and I talked about it in one of our live stream before, and the TLRs is something that we, I don't know about we, but me personally love. I love TLRs. I have a few TLR film cameras around. I really would like to see a digital version. That would be great. That would be fantastic. And I just wish to see someone make something like that. And talk about nostalgia, talk about retro. TLR would be on top. And that will be fantastic if someone does eventually make something like that. Whether it's going to be Micro Four Third, APS-C, full frame or medium format. I would love to see that. But Micro Four Third, if they make one, it'll be more affordable for sure. Because if it's full frame or anything bigger, then that is going to cost you a bomb to get one. I'm pretty sure of that. But we'll see. We'll see whether that day will happen. Okay, and David Black said, my current cameras are the OM1 Mark II and OM5 and Pen-F. I've owned all the 1 and 5 series. Each one is an evolution improvement, right? I think so. I mean, that there are notable improvements, but the improvements I still think is incremental. It's not so much that I would think is, wow, oh my god, that is new, right? AI, I think that Owen actually mentioned about AI. Just bring your comment. You bring your comment. AI is the next step in all photography. Hardware won't change as much as software. We must distrust this, but is this the future? I think so. I totally believe AI is the future in photography, but we have to be very, very careful when we talk about AI. First of all, we have to separate AI into two things, right? The imagery, and the camera developments itself, right? Let's talk about camera. Of course, that's the main part of today's discussion is the camera. We're already starting seeing a lot of AI stuff happening now, and AI subject recognition obviously is probably one of the biggest and also most prominent developments over the last few years. Kickstarted by Olympus EM1X, right? It's the very first mirrorless camera to actually have AI subject recognition. At the time, of course, it's only talk about train, plane, and motorcycles and cars and stuff like that, right? They were the first one. Olympus really kickstarting all this computational stuff really early on. However, others has caught up and quite possibly surpassing Olympus/OM system right now when it comes to AI subject recognition. Many people may not use it, but consumer expects something else, right? So Sony, Canon, Fuji, they now have subject recognitions for products for ants. I'm not joking, ants, yeah? Fujifilm, the XM5 that I just tested, has AI subject recognition for drones. I don't know why I would like to take photograph of my drones flying, but it has a drone subject recognition. And it has all kinds of crazy stuff, right? You know, it may not be useful, you know, but it's there. You know, when a consumer buying a camera, before they buy a camera, they look at the spec sheet. They look, wow, this camera can recognize everything. Right? I know. It may sound a little bit crazy, but then again, you know, they do have it, right? I'm not joking. They do have it. I don't have the XM5 now. I returned the XM5 already, but yeah, it really say in the spec sheet saying that they can recognize drones. So there you go. They recognize almost everything now. But OM Systems OM Mark II, which is the latest flagship from OM System, doesn't have much really by comparison. You know, I'm not saying which one's better, you know, because no one really photographed drones, no one really photographed ants, to be honest. And then, but when it comes to a spec sheet comparison, you know, just put it bluntly, people always see that more is better, right? The higher the number, the better. Unfortunately, that is kind of like a consumer fact, and that doesn't bode well with OM Systems cameras. If you just by looking at the spec sheet, the AI subject recognitions now, it finally added human in the OM Mark II, but then again, the human subject recognition has been around with other manufacturers for a couple of years now, and it's only this year, in 2024, when the Mark II came out, that finally caught up. So for a company kickstarted this sort of AI subject recognition and now being left behind by compared to other makers, it doesn't bode well from a consumer's point of view. I personally don't mind because I don't really use any of them apart from human, and then because that's me. But for a lot of newcomers, new photographers, new dad, new mom, want to get a new cameras, new flagship cameras. I want the all singing, all dancing, advanced cameras. They're gonna look at a spec sheet, look at it. Oh, this thing can do this and that. Oh, this one can do this and that. Oh, that one can do A to Z, everything. I'm gonna get the A to Z for this, for the amount of money that I'm gonna spend. And that is the trouble, I think, for a lot of Micro Four Third cameras, not just about OM System, but Lumix as well. And in terms of features, at this moment in time, it seemed to lack a little bit, right? And AI, talk about subject recognition. Another thing that Canon is starting to introduce right now is the AI noise reduction in camera, right? And that is something I think. I would have thought the Micro Four Third would get that first, especially OM System, and because they are kind of like the leader or wanted to be a leader in the computational side. So the Canon R system now, they had AI noise reduction in camera for RAW and also JPEG. And that is crazy, right? That is fantastic in a way, because depending what sort of thing you do, full frame's already better in terms of noise performance at high ISO settings compared to crop formats. And now they having that feature means that they're going to take that leap even further away from crop sensors. Not saying that you need to shoot 12,800 all the time, but it just gives you that option to shoot higher ISOs if you really want to. But compared to Micro Four Third, for instance, and we haven't seen anything like that. Even though we have a smaller sensor, potentially less demanding from the processor's point of view, we should be able to do that even better and quicker than them. But we haven't seen anything like that yet. So is this down to resources? Is it down to they're reluctant to do things, to move forward? I'm not entirely sure at this moment in time. My 2 cents is two things here. From OM Systems, I believe, because they're still new company, even though it's been a few years already since they took over from Olympus, but they're still relatively new company, so they're still figuring it out about certain things. They're still massaging the resources that they currently have to be more efficient, to have a more lean business models, to make sure that they become profitable, because as a company you need to be profitable before they move forward and become a bigger company, bigger player, right? They need to sort out a lot of things before the next big things come out. I can understand that. But Lumix is they've been a big players for a while in the Micro Four Third space, and also they are very renowned for the video side, and they're tapping to Olympus/OM Systems categories by launching G9 Mark II and some other photography related products, which is fine. But now they are doing full frame, so they're having two minds at the moment, and because of the commitments to full frame, they're juggling with resources. Previously, all the resources is in Micro Four Third, and they have a lot more to play with, and now they don't. So the Micro Four Third developments at the Micro Four Third team in Lumix probably quite a bit smaller compared to before, and a lot of the engineers will probably be pulled to full frame and trying to be more competitive in the full frame market, because they are now competing with the bigger boys, right? with the likes of Sony, Nikon, and Canon, and that's a tough market to fight. And so Micro Four Third still has its place. And so in a way, it feels to me that Lumix is kind of half forgotten Micro Four Third, even though they're still in it, but the heart is not in it, if you know what I mean. And OM is still figuring things out. So it leaves us Micro Four Third users and photographers and creators alike a little bit in a very awkward and maybe a little bit embarrassed stage at the moment. Even though we are fully supporting the system, fully supporting the format, we appreciate the format of whatever, the technological developments and everything, whatnot. But we are left here having our hands crossed, standing there and waiting. And we have been waiting for a while. And that's my 2 cents. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I definitely feeling, a lot of us are definitely, even my beard is growing a bit white now. To put you into a little bit of perspective there. So it's a waiting game, and I don't know how much longer people can wait, and because other camera manufacturers are bringing out new things, advancing things, and giving some headliners, features. Well, whether useful or not, that's another thing. But headliner features, left, right, and center. And I think, as a Micro Four Third fan, as a Micro Four Third user, we definitely, hoping, whether it's going to be Lumix or OM system, to give us something to say, oh yeah, finally, oh yeah, that is cool. I can scream about these features. I can scream about this particular product in front of my other photographer friends who have bigger cameras. I'm dreading for that day to happen. Whether that will happen or not is time will tell. But I'm hoping to see something like that. It's so kind of discouraging in the last few years just to see other manufacturers starting to have kind of interesting features. Like I said, Canon's iFocus system is pretty cool, and other manufacturers starting to go for 4K 120, 4K 8K, 6K open gate. I know Lumix been doing it for a while. These are videos I'm talking about. But OM, obviously, they're not really into videos. But they're not advancing the resolution side of either. So it feels that they really desperately need a new sensor. They desperately needed a high megapixel count sensor, a faster processor, a more enhanced, maybe even better or new computational features. This is what their strength, right? This is what OM system is known for, and they need that push to give the existing users, or even people who are considering getting into Micro Four Third, something to look forward to. Lumix, yes, they're doing what they're doing now, but like I said, their resources are split at the moment between full frame and the Micro Four Third. I don't know. For them to advance Micro Four Third, they need to put in a lot more resources. GX7 is a great product. GX7, don't get me wrong, GX7 is fantastic. I think personally even better than G9 Mark II by quite a margin. If you are thinking about a video cameras for hybrid, like I said, hybrid doesn't make sense to me. Like I said in the beginning, that's why I think G9 Mark II is kind of like a odd child, a lot more like an orphan. To me, if I want to get a still camera, I still use my OM5, use my OM Mark II. But for filming, GX7, yeah, definitely. If I want to use Micro Four Third to film, and GX7 by far is the only camera I would go for these days. So it's weird. It's weird. So let me know your thoughts about what I just said, and what you think about the development side of it. Whether we are really indeed waiting and desperately hoping something from either OM or Lumix to release, to give us something to wow people. And I think the format in general deserves it, right? The format itself is fantastic format. People may argue otherwise, but look, like I said at the beginning, I use full frame, I use APS-C, I use medium format, I use Micro Four Third. Micro Four Third has always been my preferred choice for many things. Travel, documentaries, and street photography. You can't beat Micro Four Third. Not only just the form factor, but it's just many benefits you have from the whole entire system. If I have to shoot low light stuff, yes, For sure, yes, I'm going to use a larger format because the low light capabilities and low light performance. Even though yes, we have pure RAW these days, but time, like I said, time is money. So if I can get something without having to go through a lot of RAW reductions, and I would go for a slightly better format. So low light, yes, still, and also high resolution. And I'll have to go for a larger format simply because Micro Four Thirds, even with Lumix, is topping out at 26 megapixel. If you do 3x2 format, which I often do, 3x2, you're only getting less than that. So like you are not really gaining the entire resolution gain. OM is still 20, so I'm hoping one day we're going to see something slightly better. 24, 25, 26 would be quite nice. Maybe we see some next generation stuff, because we have been rumor has been suggesting that Micro Four Thirds should go up to 40 to 45 megapixels, and that is about 6-7 years ago now we've been talking about. Having said that, I did I think 2 or 3 years ago I made a video talking about the Sharp 8K video camera. Right, and they have since abandoned the project, and unfortunately, and I would love to see Sharp continue with the Micro Four Thirds camera, but unfortunately, maybe resources, maybe just simply not working or not. The 8K camera is now a dead project, so that's a shame. But having said that, they were prototyping it, so they were showcasing it in some technology shows about the 8K camera. So the sensor exists. For an 8K video capable camera to work, a sensor needs to be high resolution enough to cover the 8K, right? You have to. So for an 8K to work, the sensor has to be at least 40 megapixel. And that tells me 40 megapixel Micro Four Thirds sensor exists for more than 4 to 5 years now. Well, okay. So when are we going to get that? I don't know. And hoping very, very soon, right? And I'm pretty sure and whoever makes these chips, most likely Sony, have already advanced the camera chipsets and the sensor technologies since 4 or 5 years ago. And that would mean that if we get a 40 megapixel 8K compatible Micro Four Thirds sensor nowadays, it will be at least 2 to 3 times better than what we saw in the Sharp 8K video prototype. That will be quite fun. That will be quite nice, right? You know, don't we want to see something exciting like this? I think personally it would. Whether it's gonna be as good performing as the lower megapixel count cameras, probably not. But at least something that we can try out, something that we could probably say that, okay, well, now I have a 40 megapixel Micro Four Thirds camera, and from lower ISO rankings probably perform okay. High ISO may not be, but what the heck, I don't care. You know, I just want something different to talk about. There you go. So 8K 40 megapixel sensor does exist, and it's probably been a while already as well. And if I'm being honest, I probably would believe there will be even high resolution Micro Four Thirds sensor out there right now. Just no one has been reporting it. No one has been talking about it. It could possibly a very high, megapixels, also very high resolution per inch sensor out there that equates to really extremely high megapixel output from any format. So I'm looking forward to that. But at the moment, like I said, Sony is probably thinking about concentrating on the full frame market. They still supplying chipset and sensors to other manufacturers and also other companies, but it all supply and demand, right? Micro Four Thirds, we need that to happen. We need to have sales. We need to have the numbers for the camera makers to consider getting those latest chips, because they don't come cheap. And obviously, the bigger the order, economy scale, right? The lower the price. So it's going to be chicken and egg. For OM or Lumix to get something like that, they need to have a big order. They need to have the initial number that they believe they can sell. It is something that I think is quite hard to get past. And as much as I want to promote Micro Four Thirds, but the general perceptions of Micro Four Thirds is always going to be lesser format compared to larger format, which isn't true. I proved it many times, and I even made the video about the merit of Micro Four Thirds comparing to full frame, for instance, at one of my wedding shoots a couple of years ago. I showcase what Micro Four Thirds is. I showcase what Micro Four Thirds can be compared to other formats, depending on situations. So there is no pros and cons, no equivalent talks in any sort of formats, because each format deserves its place. The reason why Micro Four Thirds exists, why APS-C exists, why full frame and medium format exists, is because they all have its place. Right? I don't think anyone can say that my format is the best. My format can beat everybody else's. I think whoever said that is a nutter. With all due respect, yeah, I don't think you can say that one format can dominate, conquer everything, right? You can't. I don't think so. For many people always say that, I can get full frame and APS-C camera now closer to Micro Four Thirds size, maybe even smaller than Micro Four Thirds camera bodies. I think you may be kind of misunderstood a lot of things. For a small full frame camera body like the Lumix S9, for instance, that's the smaller, probably one of the smallest full frame body around. If you put it side by side, it is smaller than the G9 Mark II, smaller than GX7, maybe even smaller than the the OM1 Mark II. It is smaller, but then again, don't forget about the lenses, right? I always say that to cover the sensor size, you need a certain amount of space to allow for the rear elements to cover the sensor size. So for that to have, it's physics. So lens has to be a certain size. Okay, fair enough. You can throw in a pancake lens. You can throw in a small aperture lens. But as long as you're starting to get into the 1.4 prime lens, starting to get the 2.8 zoom lenses, you are getting big system still. No matter how you look at it, those 24 to 70 2.8, the 70 to 200 2.8, if you look at the size of those things, they are gigantic, right? So camera body, possibly, if you really trying to squeeze everything into a body, and I haven't even talked about compromises yet. I'm just talking about size. You are not getting a small system. System is where Micro Four Thirds strength is, and we can have big Micro Four Thirds camera, but at the same time we can have tiny Micro Four Thirds camera bodies, like the likes of the GM series, which already kind of gone. I'm hoping Lumix will bring it back. The Pen series, right? The Pen series are tiny, comparatively small, slim, and pocketable. So, form factor is still Micro Four Thirds strength, and so I don't think any format can claim the world. I don't think so. You can say versatile, but I wouldn't say they can claim the world, saying that I can just use one system. The reason I have multiple systems is because I have different needs as a photographer. Most cases I use this system for that, and in another case I'll use another system for that. So it's as simple as that. I don't think anyone could easily say that I just need that camera that would do everything for me. Nah, I don't think so. So let's go to you guys now, and let's see what you guys are talking about, and I can respond to you. I'm gonna scroll back just a little bit. So John Allen, Micro Four Thirds reached its peak with the EM1 Mark II, in my opinion. After that, I went full frame. Well, that's obviously I respect your opinion. Many did so, and many also returned. And after a while, from the comments I received anyway, it's interesting because I have gone through a whole cycle of moving around different formats, and now I actually have different formats and to do different things. So I haven't really been moving around that much. I'm just adding different formats to my arsenal, and like I said, I have APS-C, full frame, and medium format lying around doing different jobs. Yes, I'm still vouching for Micro Four Thirds. I'm still supporting Micro Four Thirds. Of course, I'm still an OM system ambassador, so I would, obviously, of course, use the gear because and that's what I do. But at the same time, like I said, I have many systems just to do different things, and or different scenarios. If I know I needed to go somewhere far, and I would usually, Micro Four Thirds is probably the only system I will ever need or take with me, just because it will lighten my load all together as a system. I could just carry a backpack with about 3 to 4 lenses and a couple of bodies. It still weigh less than a full frame set, if I know what I mean. Yeah. And so I much prefer that if I'm going far away. For some local shoots, studio shoots, I'll probably use a high megapixel cameras, like medium format, maybe full frame. And APS-C, again, once again, I think it's a bit embarrassing, kind of in midway, kind of not quite full frame and not quite micro four thirds, but I'm starting to get the gist of it, and that's why I'm kind of playing around the Fujifilm a little bit just to see how it feels and how it goes. But yeah, so far I kind of like it, and but I still have to find a place for it. Okay, David Black, I can see the next OM1 will add insect AI AF. You think so, eh? that would be quite fun to see. Finally, we can use the macro lenses just to point in these ants, and you can see the little boxes highlighting each ant. That would be really cool. It's already confusing enough just to look at swans and birds, because when they're in the flock together, you see like 1,000 boxes highlighting on the screen. It's kind of a little bit overwhelming. The side towards screens. Sarcastically, how did photographers prior to auto eye take a photo of a person in action? Very, very good point. In my last video that I made about the camera industry, and I actually did say that many newer uninitiated photographers, that's a better word, uninitiated photographers, first getting into the industry, they looking at buying a new camera, and they see all these 23, 24 models would have eye focus. I said, oh, eye focus, that means that I could nail the eyes, right? To take portrait. And you're quite right, like, before all this happened, how did people take photos of people, right? How did photographers do that? I started photography when I was shooting film. So, like, we never had anything like that. We just have a tiny, we just have a little box highlighting, almost covering the entire face. How do I know whether, my eyes in focus? Well, I don't. All I can say is, you just have to utilize your knowledge about depth of field to cover, that is, and also depending on the framing, you can go closer, do a proper facial shot with a long lens, and then you can basically pinpoint your focus point near or at the eye. That's my eye focus. We just simply don't have that technology. But then again, I would say most of my portrait work in the early days, without eye focus, we're all fine. We're all perfect. All the eyes were sharp. So we don't really need eye focus to nail it. People misunderstood a lot of things, but especially distance and depth of field. And these are the things that many have forgotten about. And these are the fundamentals, like I said in the videos, these are fundamental knowledge and skills that each photographer or each portrait photographer should learn and master and understand. Because when you think about this eye focus thing, yeah, just to give you a scenario, if you're shooting let's using full frame terms, because I don't want to keep converting everything. So let's say you have a standard lens, a 50mm lens, right? You're standing about, 10 feet away from the subject. So the face in the frame is relatively small, right? Even if you're shooting 1.2, even 1, f1, yeah, very shallow depth of field. If the box is highlighting the entire face, yeah, the eye's in focus because of depth of field. Yeah, you need to understand the distance. Yeah, when you're at that sort of a distance away from the lens, and when the subject is that small, as long as you nail the focus and even the body, your eyes in focus. So no matter what little box is highlighting the eyes in the viewfinder, that does nothing, to be honest. In some way, it actually, I think, is a bit of a distraction myself, because I can't really see whether the face is actually sharp enough in focus, because the little box highlighting the eyes in that tiny head is distracting, and I can't see sometimes. And So the only time I think eye focus really works is when you're shooting really close, like an actual proper facial shot, using a long lens or getting really close to the subject, when the head is filling, almost half the frame. Yeah, and that's when eye focus is really critical. Otherwise, no matter how fast your lens is, how shallow depth of field you have, the eye focus does nothing. And this is something that many have forgotten about. If you look at the depth of field chart, if you're looking at a lot of calculation, you understand exactly why. Because the 1 inch depth of field only works when you're shooting about a feet away from your subject. And when you're further, that 1 inch is actually covering the entire body. So hopefully makes sense. And if not, hopefully I'll find some books and put the link in the description, and you can actually study that. Okay. Lawrence recently compared AI noise reduction in Camera Raw against pure RAW 4. The Camera Raw was a clear winner. Interesting. I haven't read that or haven't seen that comparison. It would be interesting to find out as well, actually. Now, since you mentioned, I might actually go and look for it after this video, after today's talk. It will be quite interesting to see, because I think Camera Raw reduction are doing a pretty good job. The only thing is that it doesn't have is DxO's extensive camera and lens profile correction. I think the profile corrections are better than Lightroom. But when it comes to noise reduction, I think that the Adobe is not doing a bad job either, because from what I can see these days, the Lightroom can actually denoise my Micro Four Thirds high ISO files quite well. Yeah, it's just the lens profile. The lens profile is lacking a little bit, I have to admit, and not as good as the DxO. So I just have to fine-tune my sharpening in post, and to make sure that it can match the DxO output. Not 100%, but at the same time, like I said, it's good enough for me to get away with it for a lot of my commercial shoots, and I'm not complaining about it. My client is certainly not complaining about it. So it's more than enough for me to use. Would love to have DxO 4. But then again, like I said, I have to pay for it. Why? I just don't want to pay for the upgrade. And I'm already paying for so many different software. I just don't think it would be right for me to spend more money on something that is already doing the job for me. So maybe one day when DxO and having a really cool features come out, and something that will wow me, and I would consider upgrading to it. But for now, and each iterations of the DxO Pure Raw is more or less the same. I know the last 2 generations has the XD version. The XD seems to be a better version of the existing Pure Raw, so give you extra details. For me, I think the extra detail works very well with cityscapes and landscape, with things that with a lot of details. But I'm a portrait guy. From a portrait point of view, I actually want less detail to make the skin smoother. Believe me or not, but that's only me anyway. And some people may want more details anyway, and then they can just downgrade it after a little bit afterward. Okay, so Jacopo, and I'm switching from A73 full frame to Pana G9 Mark II, and now I'm happy with the 16-bit RAW photo, 12-bit RAW video, incredible IBIS, and very good quality photo/video. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you're wrong. I think it's commendable that you said that, because I in my Micro Four Thirds Merit video, I actually compare my OM1 at the time, OM1 Mark I, to the A7 III in the wedding scenarios. I think it's very comparable, and in many ways, when it comes to in real life situation when you use a camera, especially when you have to cover depth of field, the lighting situations in a wedding and indoor environments, for instance. If you are talking about natural light only photography, I think the playing field is actually quite level, and I don't think each can beat out of each other, like most people would believe. And people will always think, oh, full frame is going to win this battle because it's got better low light performance, got better this and better that. And I just simply say, you know, when you shoot a wedding, you know exactly what I mean, yeah. And when you start to have different lighting situations, or changing from indoor, outdoor, and then going into very dim environment, and when you have to cover group photos and this and that, when you actually starting to use it in a real life situations, then you're starting to understand everything that I said in that video, because people may not believe it. People still don't believe it, and because they don't shoot in those environments. And I'm only speaking from an experience point of view, not necessarily comparing technological numbers to numbers. And because I think technology numbers comparison is one thing, but real life photography is a separate thing altogether. All right. And I love the video, by the way. The video features some Lumix camera, is great. But for me, I think that the GX7 is definitely my preferred choice for videos still. Jan or Jan, I think full frame noise versus micro four thirds noise is also very dependent on the lenses. A micro four thirds f4 lens versus the full frame f6.3 is about the same in terms of noise, and full frame f4 is so expensive, for instance. Right. Interesting argument, and I would like to add a little bit to your argument as well. A lot of people have been comparing, especially DP Review. You know, remember DP Review's website? They always have this little noise chart you can look at, and then underneath that they have different kind of models you can choose and compare the noise performances, right? People may always say that, oh yeah, full frame is better, this and that, and when you're starting to go to like ISO 1600, 3200, 6400 and above, yeah. If you go back to DP Reviews now and have a look at those noise performance comparison, right? Trust me, just go in there, trying to calculate a simple calculation. Try to calculate the equivalence of micro four thirds resolution to, if you convert it into a full frame. When I say that, it's because full frames roughly is about 4 times the size of micro four thirds sensor, right? So to have the same pixel per inch kind of a density calculation, you know a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor is kind of equivalent to about 60-80 megapixel full frame sensor. And if you're looking at that, even if you look at those DP Review charts and comparison, if you blow it into 100%, and you will see the pixel noise level is actually about the same. I don't know how many of you actually realize that or actually seen that. If you go into that, if you click onto the noise performance, look at the white, look at the black and the gray, and you can see the color noise is very much the same. Okay, it's more to do with the perceived noise performance from a full frame sensor, simply because if you're looking at the density of the pixel, the full frame, even with the 30 or 40 megapixel full frame sensor, is actually less than micro four thirds. Because you're thinking about like Lumix at the moment has 25 megapixel sensor, and in fact, if you look at the pixel per inch, there is much denser than full frame, a lot, I would say majority of the full frame cameras. And that means that if you downgrade it, if you're looking at the noise performances, like the older generations of micro four thirds sensor, they actually better. It's kind of like a weird comparison, and which a lot of full frame guys keep arguing about the noise performance are better, but I always see these comparisons in DP Review and just blow it up at pixel levels, and you can actually see that I think that's why today's the talk, right? I'm saying that the development hasn't really advanced that much, because when you're looking at that sort of detail and that sort of level, you realize that even with today's sensor technology, I don't think the noise is particularly better, at pixel level compared to older cameras, and it hasn't. It just simply, it may have better processing. The processor is better, and also, yeah, you can probably, because of how the chipset is constructed, and also how the architecture is now advanced, and you may be able to squeeze out a couple of more stops in high ISO performances, because the sensor can now be pushed a little bit more to get a couple of more stop or high ISO stuff going. But other than that, majority of us who shoot between ISO, the base ISO, whatever that is, 80, 100, or 200, all the way to about 6400. This is kind of like the normal range of ISO that each photographer would use at any one time. Anything beyond that, like 12,800, 25,600 and higher, are really for emergency or something that perhaps if you're shooting a lot of low light or dusk or dawn wildlife chasing, a cheetah chasing, you need that speed, then you might have to push the ISO that high. And also I've seen a lot of YouTube reviewers talk about people, I shoot basketball, I shoot football, I shoot sports at night. Well, if you shoot professionally, and let me say, if I'm allowed to say, is that stadiums, indoor venues are very well lit. Come on, give me a chance, right? And all these older film photographers are managed to take photos of these people playing sports with film cameras. Are taught, most of these films were using at the time were all 800 ISO speed films, not 6400, not 12,800. We don't have that film speed exist, in colors. Yeah. So if people manage to catch those, and that argument of people saying, I need high performance, high ISO, low noise level performing cameras to be able to do my job. I mean, have you been to a stadium, right? You've been to a football match. You've been to a baseball match. You've been to a basketball court. You see how many spotlights are there. You see how many lights are there to lit up the entire court. Everyone is well lit, and then so unless you are really talking about high school, and or like very not professional sport, those may be the case because the sports hall, the sports ground may not be as well lit as the professional stadium. Then you may need to push the ISO a little bit more, and that you have an argument. But for those YouTube reviews talking about, I need this sort of high ISO speed to be able to do this and that, and I don't think that's an argument because, like I said, professional sports photographer in the olden days are able to do that with a 400 and 800 film. And why can't you do that right now? So you don't need 6400. You don't need, certainly not 12,800. And those arguments really becoming a little bit of a marketing thing. So that's how I feel about it. Okay. Slider Pro, sadly Olympus and Panasonic don't understand the phone size camera like the GX800 with interchangeable lens are ridiculously good. A compact 12 to 45, 56 1.4, and no phone ever competes at the cost of $700. I would think so. And like I said, I'm a big admirer of the GM series. Even I'm OM guy. I love the GM. I love the GM 1, GM 5. I know the GX is really great. Those small form factor cameras are amazing. It has the ability to change lenses, so you have the option if you really want to attach to a bigger lens. And yes, there is nothing the smartphone can match. I mean, I have a lot of smartphone accessories that people send it to me for review. I even have a scope lens. I have tele lenses. I have all kinds of stuff. But you can't match the quality, and you simply can't. Those optics just can't match a proper lens. No matter how good the AI processing within the smartphone is, you simply cannot produce the same result as a proper long tele lens, for instance, and even macro. It's good for general purposes, but when you start to get into specialist territories, and yes, I don't think you can have that. And also, even with normal range, the quality coming out from a bigger sensor cameras is still going to be better. We talk about sensor size already, and smartphone is tiny little sensors, and they're packing 48 megapixel, 100 megapixel. Come on, you know it's going to be bad. And the only thing that they can rescue themselves is the AI technologies. The AI has done a fantastic job in not only removing noise but also giving you realistic results, and also the AI photo stacking to create HDR images is something that I think it's great, for many consumers. Because for those people who cannot or do not have the skills or knowledge to photo stack, for instance, and to then perhaps is something that the smartphone simply wins when it comes to convenience point of view. But for those who are definitely want to put more effort into photography, more knowledgeable and more skilled, and yeah, nothing can beat a proper camera. That's for sure. And I hope that this will translate into future generations as well, and then they will understand and appreciate more about proper cameras. Let's see. And Lauren say, I never shot about 1600 ISO with M43 until last week. Then a test at 12,800 of a hummingbird in flight using camera raw and was astounded at ISO 200 light quality. OM1 Mark II 100 to 400. You'll be amazed. You know what? All this AI noise reduction is amazing. Yeah, regardless who makes them, I think they're amazing. It really brought a lot of my older photos back to life. I'm not joking, because there are a few photos that that I shot in the past, especially the early days of digital photography. Most digital cameras, full frame included, and they were topping out at 1600 and 3200 extended, and the performance is not good. So there are a few shots that I did in the past that had 1600 or 3200s, and that looked horrible at the time. But I managed to actually resurrect those shots and look pretty decent because of these AI noise reduction softwares. And that is fun, because I never thought that those cameras, those images were great, even though that I thought, I just keep those images because they're kind of emergency, and also just a moment, just a memory of that place or thing that I photographed. But now it actually becomes a viable photo that I would like to display. So that is interesting. Sweden Ove, and I'm waiting for new entry-level OM and pen cameras to be sold. I understand that 25 megapixel is needed for getting okay revenue, despite not needed, but OM10 and an entry-level and an entry OM50 would be made along the pen LM. I would love to see OM expand the line, and the moment they are really, I know they're still selling the EP7, but quite frankly, I think that they are having just the OM1 and the OM5. We'll see. And rumors suggest that they're going to release a new camera next year, so we just have to wait and see what they're going to launch. Whether it's going to be an OM5 Mark II or certainly I won't believe it's going to be OM1 Mark III, because they just released it this year. They're definitely not going to go for another flagship unless it's OM1X, but I don't think that either. So we'll see. I don't know. We just have to wait and see what OM is going to do. And hopefully something exciting. Like I said, I think we users want something new to see, and that's for sure. And I'm really hoping that will happen. That will be quite interesting to have a go. Right. Andrew say that in-camera DNR could be quickly surpassed by an app, I feel. If Canon includes this in-body, they may need regular firmware updates. I doubt it. They need firmware updates to do that, because the thing is about in-camera raw noise reduction is that they are specific to the body, specific for that type of camera. So it's not like noise reduction that we use in an app or on the computer, because it needs to cover a variety of formats and models and whatever generations of cameras. The noise reduction that in each of the Canon cameras is specific to that camera's raw file, so it's dedicated. So they don't need firmware to enhance it. Once they have the model, it's doing a job. I don't think they're going to upgrade it. So I don't think that would be the case, but I would like to see similar features starting to happen in Micro Four Thirds bodies. That would be really, really good, because then it will be one less step for me to do. That's true, right? At the moment, if I'm shooting a lot of high ISO stuff with Micro Four Thirds cameras, I have to bring all these images back home download them to my Lightroom and code the photos, and have the final set to be noise reduction. Have the noise reduction on for the final set before I export them. I think that it would be great if I can have if this step skipped, so I don't have to do the noise reduction in the software and everything in camera, and that would be fantastic. Whether they're going to do that or not, I'm not entirely sure, but certainly it's a good technology or gimmick that people would like to see. And did I say gimmick? I think I did say gimmick, isn't it? No, it's not a gimmick. It's a good thing to have. And but that might make DxO unhappy, because if everything's going to be in camera, that means that their software is no longer needed. They probably still sell them for older cameras, and that means that you make it even less kind of like attractive to many of the people who want to get the newer software, because I mean, all the new cameras now have in-camera digital noise reductions, and I don't need have this software anymore. It's already done the job for me. Okay, let's continue here. And if we got a 40 megapixel M43 chip, perhaps I would consider swapping to Micro Four Thirds entirely. Ooh, really? Okay. I did say that, 8K chips already, like 8K video, Micro Four Thirds chips already available many years ago, and so 40 megapixel is there. 40 megapixel is available. It just needs someone to take that leap to get it, put it in the camera. I'm really, really hoping that day will come, and imagine that happens. Ooh, that's gonna be cool. That's gonna be cool. And make it a photo only a camera too, right? The only reason I say that is because two things. Micro Four Thirds is already Micro Four Thirds makers, Lumix or OM, already seeing that the Micro Four Thirds market is not as big as before, and number is already one of the big factor in making any updates or R&D. So having an 8K chip or 40 megapixel Micro Four Thirds sensor, it makes more sense with still only than a video, because video, there are two things there. Video is, people who may be using an 8K video shooting would probably go for a larger format for noise performance alone, so they probably won't do that. And second is that I think 8K, from what I heard and from what I understand from previous my conversation with some of the older engineers in Olympus, was that they didn't have enough processing power from the chipset's point of view. I am not entirely understand that side of it, because I'm not a camera engineer, and so I'm not entirely sure what that relevance is, because obviously now 8K is becoming more and more common, and more companies can support 8K videos, and that means the processing power is here, processing chipset is here. A lot of the processors are made by third party, even though it's branded by each camera makers, but I'm pretty sure some of these chips are made by someone else. So that means that they could potentially get the power to make that happen. So if any of the processors are made by OM or Lumix themselves, perhaps they need to put more resources in, make sure that their processor can do the job for 8K. And but 8K does demand a lot more processing power, and also generate more heat. So I'm not entirely sure whether that would happen, but making it still definitely more feasible, because still is less demanding. And if you do have the processing power, it will come in handy with the AI noise reduction in camera, better than having it on the still on the video side. So I think having a still 40 megapixel Micro Four Thirds camera would definitely make more sense. It definitely would probably sell more as well. Robert, if I were MFT camera manufacturer, 40 megapixel would feel a little bit pointless to me, considering you get zero extra detail with current sensor when using the f4.5 or narrower. Right. It's all about how much you want to enlarge your photograph, in fact, and it's you know, it's something that I always say. Megapixel is a bit of a myth, you know, to a lot of people. They may not understand it fully. Like I said earlier in today's chat, I took a 6 megapixel digital camera to Spain for my family holiday, and I had a lot of fun with it. You know, the images I capture, some of you may not have seen it, but I'm gonna make a video about the Epson RD1 that I took to Spain and talk about those photos. So stay tuned for that particular video, because I had loads of fun. The video, so the images that I captured was fantastic. It's only 6 megapixel, and so it's nothing great about that. But for me, it's enough. You know, extra detail is only about a personal reasons. You know, do I want to blow it up? Do I want to go in? Do I want to crop it? I think 20, 12, 40, 100 is a game, you know, is something that I don't see as important in photography. If you do have the need, yes, but when I say about 40 megapixel in this conversation is that it will give Micro Four Thirds users or potential users who are considering Micro Four Thirds something to consider. It helps the format to the public, so that we are moving forward, not staying in the same place. I think that is the general consensus, the general feeling about a lot of photographers and Micro Four Thirds users, is that we haven't really moved, you know, for the last few years from a platform point of view. We don't see big numbers, you know, not necessarily we need it, but we haven't seen big movement in the development side of it. Yeah, we just simply don't. We haven't seen anything. If you look at GX7 is a great camera. If you look at the review anywhere, even myself included, I think the GX7 is one of the greatest Micro Four Thirds cameras to date because of the video capabilities. But at the same time, if you look at the GX7 and the GX6, they're almost identical. Just one with face detection AF, you know, the chipset. There are obviously some differences internally, but overall, if you're really looking at the spec sheet, and I think the only major difference is that the GX7 has face detect AF, the GX7 still has the DFD, but I'm still happy using the GX6 to film. You know, there's no difference because I shoot menu focus anyway when I do filming. And in that case, I think GX6 is still a capable camera. You can now have it for cheap as well. So that is something I believe, you know, a 40 megapixel would definitely give something Micro Four Thirds users to talk about. And also, because we talk about them, it will give the attentions to the format, and people will start looking at, oh, Micro Four Thirds got something new. Look at that, the high megapixel sensors and my high megapixel camera. It's just something to talk about. You know, I think the format needed something to reignite the spark within the format, and also in people's imagination. Oh, Micro Four Thirds is moving. Micro Four Thirds is advancing. Micro Four Thirds is in a spotlight again. You know, something is looking at it, and I think we need that. It's not so much about really need or not. I think that we just simply need something. Okay. DW say 35 megapixels, usable 12,800, 13 stop dynamic range. Don't push any of the spec too much. Micro Four Thirds is always about the best balance. The best balance, the word. And I think that is very good about the best balance. We do need balance. But I think what we are talking about is the Halo product that we want. We know I spoke about it quite a few times now, and in different chats. Is that any camera makers, any lens makers, any product designer needs to have a Halo product. When I say Halo product, it means that something that you just put everything into it, including the kitchen sink, everything, like to make the camera as bold as possible, right? You need that camera to give the world that this is Micro Four Thirds, this is full frame, this is APS-C. You need a product like that. And as much as I love the EM1X, the EM1X could have been the Halo product, although it missed the mark ever so slightly. You know, in its own defense, I think it's a great camera. It's one of the greatest Micro Four Thirds cameras, despite the huge size, but I love it. And then, but let's talk about the EM1X, because the EM1X, I think, if the camera at the time released it with a much higher resolution EVF, with a slightly higher megapixel sensor, with slightly better video specs, even though it's not about video, but I'm just saying as a product. For instance, 4K 60, 4K 120, something like that. That EM1X that I'm using for streaming right now would be that Micro Four Thirds camera. It's almost like car industry, right? You're thinking about the Formula One. Formula One cars are the kind of like the tip, the halo product of car manufacturing and technologies. Many of the cars that we drive today has technology coming out from Formula One 10, 20 years ago, right? So we need something like that. You know, we need something that is high performing, it may not be affordable for many people, but that's not the point. This is a showcase for a manufacturer, for a maker, for the platform, to show people that this is what Micro Four Thirds can do. Yeah, something like that. And I would even go as far as saying that the GM1 was a halo product. And why is that? It hasn't got IBIS. It's got a relatively modest sensor. But that's not that. It's the size. Can you get an interchangeable camera with that sensor size that small? It's still the smallest for Micro Four Thirds. And if you look at the size of it, it's just barely the same size as the RX100 compact camera with a fixed lens. That's a 1-inch sensor, even smaller than Micro Four Thirds. So that's a halo product. You either go big or you either go small. So you either go really tiny or you go really gigantic, but you throw everything in it. So the EM1X has the body size. It has the mass to fit everything in it, right? I think it has that chance. It just missed it a little bit. Just missed that little bit. Imagine the EM1X has the 5.9 million pixel EVF, and better still, even bigger one. If you can go for the latest one now, the 9 point something million dots EVF, have whatever, I just talked about the video features, has a 25, 26 megapixel, I'm talking about when it's launching about a few years ago now. That would have been a halo project, halo flagship. That people would say, wow, that is a professional camera. That is a cool, big, giant cameras. I think that would be it. That really would be it. Okay, I'm getting a bit passionate about EM1X because I do love that camera. I don't know about you, but I love the EM1X. Okay, so let's have a look at what Andrew said here. There's plenty of people who just don't understand the situation, though. The marketing will always tell you that more MP is better. Numbers, right? Numbers. People, it's very easy to compare numbers than in real life situations, because no matter how much I tell people that these are my real photos from my shoots, professional shoots, or these are my real project and this and that, people just don't associate with that because they're not me. They're not there shooting. They're not there photographing these people in whatever situation I was in. It's hard for me to convey that information over. I can show them images, but then images doesn't really always tell all the stories. Unfortunately, especially on YouTube, people say, "Oh, I can do this with my full frame camera. I can do this with my APS-C or medium for whatever." It's just not the same, right? But in real life situations, it's very different. That's why I made that video, hoping to convey that message over to people. I wasn't suggesting full frame was worse or bad. No, not at all. I'm just trying to highlight the fact that in a real life situations, these things would happen. For instance, just a very quick example, I think many of you would understand, is when I was shooting a group photograph in an indoor environment, even with the speed light, yeah, and I need to cover the depth of field to cover 3 to 4 rows of people. I want everybody in focus. A full frame would need to stop down to f11, right? f11 to be able to cover that. But on my Micro Four Thirds, f4, I can do f4. So the difference is f4 and f11 is that I could shoot with my speed light, you know, because when I don't know how many of you are familiar with the speed light, and so if you want to keep some of the ambient, I want to maintain some of the sensitivities in the sensor, so it can still record the ambient light, yeah, not just the flashlight. So that means I probably will be shooting at 1600 to keep some of the ambient light going, and maybe sometimes 3200, right? And a full frame system equivalent, but you're shooting f11. You have to push the ISO to way beyond 12,800, maybe 25,600 to be able to capture the same shot. So by then, if you think about the setting wise, to capture the same shot, I was shooting at 3200. Full frame was capturing at 25,600. You do the math to me. No matter how much better the full frame sensor is, when you get to that level, can you compare with the Micro Four Third? I would say probably about the same, if not slightly worse than the Micro Four Third image. So that's a real life situation, yeah. And then it's very much it's not a forgiving scene when you go to do a professional shoot. You know, you either get the shot or you don't get the shot, and simple as that. So for my wedding video that week, from that particular video, my assistant was using the A7 III, and he shot a lot of things that basically next to me, capturing a different angle. He was doing a lot of really extreme high ISO setting because he needed it. He needed to do this thing that I told him to do, and then and he ended up with a lot of photographs shooting at 25,600 for the bulk of the shots that he did, and some of them maybe go as high as 51,200, and that is crazy, right? You know, you're just thinking about it. I think people just never really quite understand from that side of it, and that's a real life situation I'm talking about. That's the real life situation. Numbers is easy to compare, but life situations, experience, no, you can't. You just simply can't compare. No one lighting condition is ever the same. So it's always going to be the photographer's job to make sure the setting does this job. I mean, the camera does this job by correcting the setting. And something that, once again, instruction book won't tell you that. Once again, the marketing material won't tell you that. Another thing is YouTube videos won't tell you about that, because to be quite frank, not with all due respects, a lot of the YouTube reviewers are not professional photographers. A lot of them don't make a living from photography. They don't shoot in those lighting situations. They can simulate a situation to talk about them, but the thing is, it's very different, right? You can simulate something, but it's the live action that's the difference. Okay, let's talk about something else now. Let's see what else we're here. Okay, Andrew got another one. I get that the DNR, but the progress we are seeing with app DNR, I think that's responding to my previous comment. Okay, I see what you mean. A lot of them in the new camera profile. Okay, Kunal is saying 4K 120 OM5 with a 8mm f2 weather seal lens, amazing combo. Yeah, another thing I would like to see, Micro Four Third, is perhaps more lenses. At the moment, is coming from a little bit of an embarrassing moments here now. Being a Micro Four Third supporter, is that we don't seem to see a lot of support by third-party manufacturers anymore. The likes of Laowa, even Laowa used to be a big Micro Four Third player. 7 Artisan, TT Artisan, and all of these people were Micro Four Third makers. But for the last 2 years now, for the last 24 months, all the lenses I review from these people were all full frame or APS-C. They kind of almost forgotten about Micro Four Third. Reason why? Well, this thing is, this company, of course, they want their product to sell. That's their job, right? You know, they need to make money to expand. They're going to look at what sells. And at the moment, because Micro Four Third is not selling, Micro Four Third lacking that attention that it deserves, and that is why. And I think that this is the argument I said earlier. We needed some sparks in the platform. We need a company, Olympus, to make a camera that will wow people and bring some attention to the format, then these people will come back. Oh, I need to make a lens for this new camera. We need to make some lens for this format. It's as simple as that, right? These people, they may have a license to become the Micro Four Thirds Alliance, so that means they can access to Micro Four Thirds specifications and make lenses or whatnot for the camera formats. But they are still a business. They won't make a product if it's not selling, and so it is a hard truth. But then I won't blame them either. But I do hope there'll be more third-party lens maker making more lenses for Micro Four Thirds. Laowa did a great job in a lot of the lenses, and but as far as AF the autofocus lenses goes, I think I haven't seen a third party apart from Sigma, but even Sigma has stopped making Micro Four Thirds lenses. I just want someone making more Micro Four Thirds lenses. Oh, having said that, Yongnuo just recently announced it, right? And so they did make a Micro Four Thirds lens. So I'm just hoping that just more people making them. And Lumix and OM at the moment, they have their own priorities, and Lumix is, I don't know. The last lens that they released was the 9mm f1.7, which I like. I quite like that lens. And OM, well, they're really focusing on the wildlife now and the macro side. So they all have long lenses and macro lenses, but they don't have anything else. I would like to see some primes. I would like to see some really cool like wide angle primes, perhaps. I was hoping for a 12mm prime, a pro lens. I know they have the f2, but that's been out for a while now. I think it needs an update. I'm hoping to see like a 12mm 1.4, maybe 1.2 pro. That would be amazing. And yes, an 8mm, some sort of ultra wide, that would be fantastic too. Something to rival the Panasonic 9mm 1.7 from OM would be quite interesting. Of course, not 9mm. Give us an 8, like you said here. 8mm, maybe even wider, 6mm, like the Laowa lens. That would be fantastic. I think that would be really, really cool. Hoping to see that. Okay, and let's see what else here. From Olympus E420 to E1 Mark 1 going forward. Well, that was a revolutionary move, and I have to give credit to Olympus at the time, to dump the 4/3 into Micro Four Thirds. It was a big move. It was a really, really big move. But a move that really made them who they are today, or at least to us users, because I always loved the Olympus build quality. I love the lenses. I love the rendering. I love the color science. The cameras is simply exceptional, and the Lumix is great, and I really like the relationships in the past. I really loved the early days of Micro Four Thirds when Lumix were really focusing on the video side and Olympus were focusing on stills. So they have their own priorities. They have their own kind of market. If people want to shoot video, they buy the Lumix. If they want to shoot stills, they get the Olympus. Things started to get a little bit tricky when this hybrid thing came in, and then and people started, everybody needs to start to step on others' toes now, right? Okay, let me make a stills camera, let me make a video cameras, and let me make something in between. And that's when things starting to go a little bit weird. And to me, I really miss the early days because, like I said, hybrid markets never really do it for me. And if I want a video, I go Lumix. If I want stills, I go Olympus. It's simple for me. It really was simple. Like I said, I can't do both at the same time anyway. So if I know that I'm going to do a video shoot, I simply take a video capable camera. If I'm going to do stills, I just take my stills camera out. I don't understand. It just kind of like a weird time for us, And I mean, like I'm a YouTuber now, right? I do YouTube thing. I'm also a filmmaker. I do commercial projects for people. I'm also a professional photographer. So I do things that supposedly the hybrid cameras would do for me, right? I mean, imagine that these will be my dream cameras to have the two sides, right? I can do stills and I can do video in that same body. Wouldn't that be great? But on the other hand, you know, like I have the G9 Mark II, like I said just now, I have the G9 Mark II, and I haven't touched it in a few months. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, like this is kind of like a weird thing. I like it. It's not that I dislike it, but if I shoot video, I would just simply take out my GX7 or the GX6, and then if I want to do stills, I take out my OM1 or my other stills cameras that I have now, the ZF, the ZFC. I mean, these are stills cameras because the ZFC, the video function is severely hampered by the crop factor. The ZFC, forget it, no IBIS, so it doesn't really do me at all for video. But stills, these are stills cameras, so they are fine. And so it's weird the hybrid market exists. Still today, up to 2024, I still don't understand the hybrid market. I review them, I talk about them, I use them, but then it just never really clicked with me, if you know what I mean. That is just weird. Okay, and I moved from Fuji to Olympus for the colors. That is interesting from you. And if you used Fuji before, because obviously Fuji, many people praise for the colors, you know, the kind of nostalgia film simulations, right? Yeah, it's interesting from you. I would like to hear more from you, actually. And because when you say Olympus colors, I know for me, I always love the skin tones of Olympus cameras, because it just do it for me. No matter what, how I look at cameras, how many cameras I looked at, I always think the Olympus skin tones are one of the best, if not the best, on the market. In before Olympus, I would say Canon skin colors are quite nice. I like them. But then again, you know, there are ways you can kind of fine tune the skin tones in post, but obviously a lot of work needs to be done. As a commercial guy, as a guy who shoots a lot of portrait, I want something that simply works for me, and just use it and produce images. The less I need to do in post, the better. So if color's already correct and nice, that would be the camera for me, because color is one thing that I usually spend a lot of time tuning it to get the effect that I want. But skin tone is always one of the most difficult thing for me, because I shoot people, right? You know, I simply photograph people. So if the skin tone doesn't look right, no, not really. Okay. And alternate reality. Why would I buy a Micro Four Third camera that's larger in size than a full frame camera from another maker like an M10? Advantage that my Four Third promised was small size, which is not really. Interesting, which I kind of already mentioned it. Even in previous discussion with Rod, is that size is subjective. You know, Micro Four Third system size is still much smaller than a lot. Okay, you got an M10 there. M10 is small. Lenses are small, but at the same time they are manual focus. They're not autofocus, so they tend to be a little bit smaller anyway. But the overall M system is tiny. You know, I have my M cameras. I have my M film cameras and digital cameras, and they are small. You know, if you're looking at system size, but at the same time, you have to look at the ergonomics. You have to look at the usability side of it. If you're thinking about small, some of the Micro Four Third cameras are are very tiny, like the GM1, GM5, the GX, the Pen M, the original Pen M, and they are all very, very small cameras. But it comes with a penalty. When I say penalty, is that they're not very good to hold. You know, they might be small, they might be pocket size. But when you're holding a camera, unless you're fitting a small pancake lens on it, anything larger, like a prime, is starting to feel a little bit weird. You know, it doesn't hold properly. You know, the tiny form factor, it just doesn't feel right. Especially if you start using some really nicely, lovely, fast primes or zoom lenses, and you soon realize that you need a bigger body to hold properly. The reasons why, you know, bigger Micro Four Third camera exists is because of these big camera, these big fast lenses that's available in the platform. But then again, if you compare the similar sort of specs, I mean, like aperture size lenses, fast lenses from other formats like APS-C or full frame, these lenses are by far, you know, much larger and heavier than the Micro Four Third equivalents, you know, and I'm talking about equivalent focal length. I'm not talking about equivalent aperture look. That might be another thing to debate. But let's say a 35mm 1.4 prime from a full frame camera compared to a 17mm 1.2 Pro on a Micro Four Thirds platform. The 35-1.4 and any full frame system is going to be significantly bigger than the Micro Four Thirds equivalent. And if you talk about like for like as well, it's like the obviously when I say 35-1.4, and it's not a consumer level one like the Nikon recently released. You're looking at something like the Canon 35-1.4, the L series, which is the professional series, because the 17-1.2 Pro is a pro lens. It's got fully weather sealed metal and things like that. So if you've got something equivalent, those lenses are definitely twice the size, if not 2.5 times the size, and probably double the weight. So overall, the system size and weight together with the body is still going to be much smaller with the Micro Four Thirds than a full frame. Like I said, I use both. So I use full frame, so I know how big the system size can be with the full frame compared to Micro Four Thirds. At the same time, I also appreciate what you just said about the Leica M, because the Leica M are tiny, are small, but yet they are also in menu focus only. And so yeah, it just, we can't have everything, right? We can't have everything. Okay, and let's see. Sweden, and a Halo OMX camera would be in my mind be one with triple buffer compared to OM1, 30 megapixel sensor with 6K videos, speedy camera that would be best with file size of 30 megabyte. Oh wow, interesting. Yeah, I think a Halo OM1X would be nice. Like I said, the EM1X really did miss the mark a little bit, and it could be that camera. So if OM at some point decided to make an X version again, like the larger Micro Four Thirds camera, and throw everything to it, I would get one. I think that would be the Micro Four Thirds camera that I would like to have. I know I talk about how much I talk about the Pen F2 that I really would like to have. Yes, the Pen F2 is definitely something I'm really hoping my OM system would make, because that would be the most wanted camera by many users, especially in today's market when retro styling is the top priorities for many potential camera buyers. They will look for they will look for cameras that has the look first. I'm not joking, because that is why a lot of the Fuji cameras are sold out, because that look. And at the moment, that people who are camera companies who are making these sort of retro cameras are simply don't exist, and I know Nikon has the ZF and ZF-C. They have been great sellers for Nikon. They're making a ton of money from these cameras. Fuji's been doing it since day one. OM started the whole freaking market, and they somehow kind of gone away from it. And so I'm hoping that they're going to bring in something retro styling very soon, and because I think they deserve. I think OM users or Olympus users deserve one. Second, I think the market needs more. And third, I think it will help the company to bring in some interest and also some potential new users, because, as you know, many of you following the news know that Taylor Swift is an OM user or Olympus user, because she uses an EM10. So if she likes that look of the camera, that something is definitely, doing right, the camera styling wise. So there you go. If that's the case, I think Olympus or OM really need something like that. Another Halo product and other retro cameras. These two products would combine. I think would give OM would put OM back to the map on many users, and because I think that we needed something like that to create another spark in the platform. Lumix, I'm hoping they will do something as well, but they never really into retro styling anyway. None of the cameras were really retro styling, and I'm hoping that they do another wow cameras, maybe something that with some crazy spec on video side or something. That will be amazing. And also OM, I'm hoping they're gonna bring in more computational features, something new, not AI ant recognition, please. Don't do ant recognition, but something useful, something that that is gonna wow me again. I don't know, something. And I think we discussed this before about some sort of potential AI features. And if you have any idea, please leave some comment down below. Let me know what sort of AI feature you would like to see OM introduce in the next cameras. That might be quite an interesting thing to think. I don't know. That would be quite a good thing. Yeah, that's a good conversation. Actually, if you have any idea about what OM should bring next time in terms of features or AI features, please leave some comment down in the comment section below, and well, we might talk about it next time when we talk in this live chat. Because we have a lot of imaginations. We can imagine a lot of stuff. We can wish a lot of stuff. Whether it's going to be coming a reality is another thing, but we would like to have something, right? Okay. Oh, Mike just said, I just picked up the latest comment, is the Pen F monochrome. Oh, wouldn't that be ideal? Wouldn't that be ideal? At some point, maybe, and I'm very doubtful, because monochrome is such a niche product. Even in Leica's terms, that's why the monochrome is actually more expensive than the color version, because it's not a quantity product. So they can, like I said in the beginning, right? The sensor, they exist, and if you're looking at the specs and everything, it's supposed to be cheaper. But if you don't have the economy of scale, if you're only ordering like 3,000 a year, 3,000 sensors a year, that's going to cost you, right? That's going to cost you. The manufacturer's not going to give you cheap. If you order that small quantity, you need tens of thousands of sensors to get into that kind of wholesale price, right? That's why monochrome sensors are always going to be expensive, because you just don't have that scale. Unless, suddenly the whole entire photography world wants monochrome, and that's different. If suddenly everyone wants just monochrome images, then they would do it. But then again, you can convert color images to monochrome, even though they behave differently. But to a lot of people, that why do I want a monochrome sensor when I can convert my color images to monochrome? I think monochrome sensors are for those who grow up with the film cameras, and also for those who really want to experience kind of like an old school photography, starting to use color filters to change the contrast level and the color behavior. Then you would think about a monochrome sensor. And I would love one, because I used to shoot a lot of black and white film, and I remember my yellow, red, and green filters and all the other stuff that I used to do. I would love to do that, but unfortunately, I just don't think the economy scale is there to have one that is cheap enough for us to consider. I mean, look at the Leica monochromes, and they're all very expensive. They're not cheap. The Pentax monochrome is relatively expensive for a DSLR, and the Q3 monochrome, oh my god, that's like $6,500. Monochrome cameras are not cheap. They're not cheap. Oh, Pixie as well. Pixie has a monochrome sensor, and but yeah, there aren't many, and there's a reason for it. But yes, a Pen F monochrome would be quite nice. Andrew say, vlogging was never really about video quality, it's about content. We don't watch the amazing production standards, we watch for interesting people, idea, discussion, and so on. Yes, like me going to Santa Grotto. Have anyone seen my Santa Grotto video? Oh dear me. Okay. A weather seal Pen F pair with a 17-1.8 weather seal lens with distance scales and aperture ring and the flip-up screen, please. Oh yes, that would be nice. That would be nice. Flip-up screens, finally. Yes, another thing about flip-up screen. I don't think manufacturers are really thinking about flip-up screen anymore, and for some reasons. I mean, I think they're good. I think they're great. But like I said, it's all because of this freaking hybrid market. Yes, because hybrid markets, you need the flip-up screen, right? You need the flippy screen to see yourself when you're filming. Vlogging is fine, filming is fine, but for photographers, no. But then again, they can't have two versions of it. They just want to make one. If a camera has a video feature, they will give you a flip-out screen. Yeah, sad but true. Okay. I'm going to wrap up soon. And I think, Felix, I think Olympus or really any camera system nowadays would profit from small lenses with pretty low aperture, but some actual character. Like 35-1.4 is great because it is not perfect. I think in some way, yes, and I have talked about it quite a number of times now with Rod as well in this chat, is that character is something that drives me to buy a lens. And when I get that lens, I tend to get the camera as well. And it's definitely something that I appreciate. I don't know how many photographers appreciate rendering, because so far, majority of the lens reviews out there is always talking about very technical stuff, like sharpness, chromatic aberrations, you know, the vignettes and the sun star, whatever, the bokeh shapes, the bokeh diffused angle, what, something like that, right? I think rendering is, to me at least, is the most important thing about a lens, because the lens, these images may not be sharp, but I want that feel. You know, sometimes when you create an image, it's that feel that makes you want to create that image, if you know what I mean. If you're very familiar with a particular lens, you know how the lens behaves, you know how the lens draws an image. You take that lens out, in your mind already, you're forming an image that you want to create, and you went out and trying to take the photo with that rendering in mind. And that's interesting. That is fun. That's why photography is so fun, is because you can go through that process, right? When you have one of these so-called perfect lenses these days, you know, the ultra sharp, you know, lens, whatever, they're very clinical. And I always use the word clinical. When I say clinical, is because they are manufactured. They just look the same to me. They're all sharp or unsharp. They're just the 1 and 0. They all behave very similarly, and to me they don't have the soul of some of these special lenses that I'm talking about. You can take any of these lenses out and shoot, yeah, fine, but it just doesn't really connect with me. It doesn't really have that image that I have in mind doing certain things. But then again, some people may not like what I just talked about. You know, they say, you know, I can still create amazing images with these lenses, you know, whatever lens I come across. But I think it's really depending on the genre of photography you're in. You know, if you're into fine art, if you're into street photography, into documentary, you may like certain lenses with characters. But for some other things, if you require certain type of texture, certain type of sharpness level to match the camera, for instance, then you may want to have some of those clinical lenses to do the job for you, and you can just do the post-production and making sure that they come out the way you like. But I think for me, a lot of my photographs, perhaps I'm just too old school. I'm just too old now. Look at my beard; it's getting white now, and it's just that I'm so used to film photography, you know, and I just, because in film, you're not going to change much, right? You know, you take the frame, you process it, you know, you might do a little bit of dodge and burn with the developers, but that kind of really is it. You know, you have to get everything right in the camera. And so rendering was really the thing, right? You know, you get the lens that render the way you like, and you use that to take this shot. So the negative would just turn out like that. You can't change anything. Digital, you manipulate a lot of things these days, so you can kind of change a lot of parameters and a lot of look, and the final results can be completely or drastically different to the original shot that you took in camera. So digital is very different, and I'm still very much a digitized film photographer, if I can say that. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting too old. Maybe I'm just I'm the old generations now. I'm just not the right photographer to talk about today's topics. And but there you go. That's me. I'm shouting out now. Okay, right. This side as a Pentax, I like it, Pentax. I wish Pentax had tried a Micro Four Third camera. We did get the Q, smaller sensor, but it still used the cameras regularly. I think the Q was a very cute camera, and I agree. They should have continued the Q line, and I like the Pentax Q. I never had one. I love to own one. It's a shame to discontinue now, and yeah, the only thing I can get is some second-hand versions, and also the lens choices are obviously very limited. They only had a set whenever they developed them, and yeah, just no more new stuff. So it's a sad thing to see a format goes, because the Q was good. Mind you, I did have the Pentax 110 cameras. I still have a whole set of them. I have all the lenses. In fact, I can actually adapt them to my Micro Four Third cameras, because it's, the 110 film size is roughly the size of the Micro Four Third sensor. So yeah, that is an interesting cameras back in the film days. I still shoot 110, by the way. So 110 is actually a pretty cool thing, fun thing to do. It's not perfect, like some of you said already. Not perfect, but with character, with a bit of soul to it. Okay, that's quite nice. And finally, let's do a couple of last comments before I wrap up today's talk. I use the 8-25 and the EPM2, and I love it. I hold it differently than the traditional way because I look at the screen, it feels natural and fun. Right. Interesting, because I recently reviewed the Fujifilm X-M5, and I think a lot of the comments that I received from the video is about the lack of EVF. Similarly, for those who saw the Lumix S9 camera reviews, it's got no EVF, so people hated them for it. I find it quite an interesting argument, because for majority of photographers who are my age and would love to use an EVF or OVF, any sort of viewfinder, right? You just want to poke your eyeballs into the viewfinder, looking through their little tiny windows, and it's fine, it's great. Don't get me wrong, I love using it, and also it's really good where in sunny days as well, right? You can have it like nice and clear in the viewfinder. But at the same time, you really have to look at the new generations of photographers who grow up with smartphones. These smartphone people don't have EVF whatsoever. They just simply look at the screen and holding arm length like this, like this, just holding arm length, right? They just do this to photograph something. So to them, it's natural. To them, having a big giant screen and shoot with arm length is a natural motion for them. And some of the replies to that video, for those comments in that video, is that I actually said to them, if you Google some of the new generations of fashion photographers, they may have proper cameras from Sony's and Canon and whatnot. They actually don't use EVF. If you look at some of the behind-the-scene videos that they shoot, these models, they use the back screen. They don't use EVF. So to these type of photographers, the newer type of photographers, EVF is no longer something that they crave for, no longer something that they appreciate. They just simply look at the back screen. Larger, bigger. They may not be as visible in bright daylights, but who cares? They do that with their smartphones anyway. So it is a very interesting topic, because so many people really kind of dislike the XM5, the S9, or some other cameras that without EVFs for that very reason. And for me, subjectively speaking, I say it's a great camera, but I can understand the frustrations and some of the comments saying that, oh, no EVF, no IBIS, no, that's definitely not a camera for me. That's fine. That's totally fine. You express your opinion because you don't like that camera without EVF or IBIS. That's very fine, and I don't have any problem with that. But like I said, at the same time, in some of those comments, is that I think newer type of photographers are very different breed altogether. And I think the likes of Fujifilms and even like the Pen series, yeah, you know, the EPL series don't have EVF. It's totally fine with some of these new generations of photographer because they simply don't need them, and that's how they naturally would shoot things with the back screen. Not something that they would actually even come across in their head, you know, to use an EVF. Yeah, I think that's it. So there's no right or wrong answers there. I think just preferences, and people as old as I am would always prefer an EVF or OVF. But for the newer generation, my kids, for instance, would never be able to use an EVF, and they would just look at the back screen, full stop, right? You know, that's how they grow up taking photos. Is this big giant screen and a button, and that's probably it. Okay, let's see, and Vermis, you're not late, but we are just about to wrap up. I believe it peaked a couple of years ago because it's so hard to compete with low cost full frame cameras that are actually selling at a very good price. I'm not impressed with OM systems. Okay, let's finish this talk with pricing. Okay, because I think pricing is obviously one sticking point to many potential buyers into any camera system, not just about Micro Four Third. Yes, I would admit that a lot of the lower cost full frame cameras and APS-C cameras are definitely making it more appealing to your wallet, simply because they are cheap, and they are definitely lower than some of the Micro Four Third cameras. And that's the problem when a platform don't produce enough low-cost cameras. And I said it already, Lumix and OM just don't have entry-level cameras now, and they don't. But if they do, it will be even lower than the lowest cost of full-frame cameras. And so because the scale of full-frame, at least from economy scale point of view, Sony, Nikon, and Sony, they have a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of market share that they can and they will produce entry-level cameras. And those entry-level cameras may not be as good, but they are certainly cheap. And when you look at the prices of these low entry-level full-frame cameras, they are definitely, you know, in some way cheaper than the high-end Micro Four Third cameras. But at the same time, you know, it really depending on what sort of thing you need, what sort of thing you like, and some of these lower end full frame cameras sensors are not necessarily good. And if you speak to Rod next time when you ask Rod about some of these low end full frame camera bodies, the sensor that they use are actually quite ancient, they're quite old, and some of them just don't perform as well, even though they may be full frame. If you pair with some of these really slow lenses, which, you know, what they are appealing for is their small form factor, trying to compete not only just about price, but also form factor, is that you just simply have to push everything high up. You know, you push the ISO up, and then you start getting a lot of horrible images. These low-end full-frame sensors just simply can't compete with the high-end full-frame sensors, like, you know, in any of the respective flagship series. At the same time, if you're looking at features and speed and whatnot and build quality, for instance, these low-end full-frame cameras just can't match high-end Micro Four Third cameras. You really have to compare like for like. You talk about apple and oranges at the moment because full-frame cameras, the flagships are well built, weather seal, rugged, metal, whatever, you know. But same as the Micro Four Third. Micro Four Third flagship cameras, the G9 Mark II, GX7, the OM1 Mark II, they are very high quality built body, rugged. You know, you can use it in like heavy downpour, you know, without a problem. You can't say the same thing with those low-end full-frame body, even though they may cost slightly lower than high-end full-frame Micro Four Third bodies. They're not weather sealed. They may be cheaply built. They might be plasticky. You know, nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, you know, when you compare that, and I have to say something about the Micro Four Third as well. Yeah, it just really depends. Like the XM5 I just recently reviewed. That is an entry-level APS-C camera from Fujifilm. That's a plastic body. That's not weather sealed. That's got no IBIS. Hasn't got a lot of stuff, but it's a great camera. I think it's a great camera for an entry level camera. I think people need to look at it subjectively. I think price is definitely one sticking point, and definitely something to consider, because at the end of the day, we are spending our money. So it's hard to convey that information or knowledge to say that low end full frame camera is not as good as a high end Micro Four Thirds camera. People can't compute like that because it's a different format. In fact, it is different cameras because it's quite hard to compare them directly. So you can always going to compare within the same format. I think that's a point, fairer comparison. So entry level full frame, you compare with full frame cameras, the rest of the full frame cameras, medium, like the mid level or high level, whatever. If you cross compare to format, it's always going to be tricky. It's always going to be tricky. You look at some of the high end APS-C cameras, and they are quite expensive too. And even within Sony, Nikon, and Canon, some of the high-end APS-C cameras are quite expensive. They are more expensive than the low-end full-frame camera body models. So it just doesn't compute like that. So it's really hard to say, the entry-level, the smaller, low-end full-frame is better than Micro Four Thirds and whatever is cheaper or small, whatever, right? Reason that you have. I think that it's unfair to compare like that. I review cameras, but at the same time, I only look at them subjectively. I look at them as a camera. I don't want to talk about comparison as much. I may bring in the price point. I may bring in some features, but at the same time, I should restrict myself at looking at format per format. If I'm reviewing a APS-C camera, I'll look at APS-C. I'll look at full frame cameras. I'll look at full frame cameras and look at Micro Four Thirds. I'm always going to compare with Micro Four Thirds cameras, not cross format. I think it's quite hard to do that. Especially lenses. Even lenses is worse to compare. Okay. Right. Okay. Anything else before I really try? I think today I'm talking 2.5 hours long. Oh my god, I think I've done really long today. Okay, I do agree that I do not do photography and video at the same time. I find it difficult to wrap up my mind around one, and I'm catching a moment the other's story. Yeah, that's exactly it. Exactly it. You just can't do both at the same time. I just believe, and people got the wrong idea about hybrid cameras, and it just simply do not work for me. Okay, right. And I guess I have to wrap up because I know many of you are tired listening to me for 2.5 hours. This is probably one of the longest I've done in recent time. Usually Rod and I will wrap up around 2 hours mark, and today is 2.5 hours. But like I said, thank you very much for joining me. I would like to hear from you more on this topic, and if you have anything to express yourself, any wishes that you would like to see Micro Four Thirds cameras to have in the future, any sort of wish list that you have for OM or Lumix cameras, please do leave some comment in the comment section below. Yeah, I think it'd be really fantastic for all of us Micro Four Thirds user or even general photographers to learn about this format and to appreciate and really have hope for this format to thrive in the future, to remain relevant in the photography world. And like I said, all out, whether I'm an ambassador or not, I'm a photographer, and I do believe that all these formats have a space in the photography market. Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, full frame, medium format, whatever. They all have a space, and we all need different formats to do different things. I don't think one format can conquer everything. No, I don't believe so. There's always going to be specialist tool. There's going to be camera for specific jobs, for specific purposes. So that's it. That's all I want to say about today's chat room, because I appreciate every format, but today's talk is about Micro Four Thirds. Do I think it has peaked? I don't think it has peaked. I think there are more to come. It is depending on how many people are going to keep in this format, and how much resources and how much these camera makers are willing to continue developing this format. And I think ultimately these are technologies, and the sky's the limit. If you have the imagination, if you have the soul, and you have the perseverance and the braveness to move this forward, we can. I think the Micro Four Thirds is an exciting format. I still think it's an exciting format. It's still got a lot to prove. I think it has a lot of things that other formats don't have, especially from the computational side. So I think the future is definitely interesting. So I'm hoping to see what OM is going to come up next, what Lumix is going to come up next. So we just have to watch this space. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you all next time. And I'm pretty sure Rod is going to come back. And don't forget that if you missed the first half or whatever in this chat room today, and you're very welcome to stream back later or listen it as a podcast in YouTube Music app. Or just come back anytime. In the meantime, you guys all have a great day. Have a lovely evening, morning, or wherever you are. And I will see you all very soon. Until next time. Bye for now. Peace.